We could be in for a very historic night at PPG Paints Arena when the Buffalo Sabres come to town tonight. Hunter and I are going to talk about that and more on this edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Patrick Damp. You can follow me on Twitter at synonym for wet, joined as always by the one and only Hunter Hodes. You can follow him on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can give our show's account a follow at LO_Penguins. And of course, we thank you for making this your first listen or watch of the day because we're your team every day. Don't forget that we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. And before we dive into it today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Like I said, Hunter, it could be a very historic night inside PPG Paints Arena this evening when the Penguins take on the Buffalo Sabres at 7 o'clock. And we know what milestones are facing Sid and Gino tonight, but for those who may not know, let's clue them in. Evgeni Malkin, 1 goal away from 500. Sidney Crosby, 1 point away from 1,600. And wouldn't it just be the most poetic justice ever if it happens on the same goal? But that is a little bit of wish casting for us, so overall, this is, I don't want to say it's a must-win game for the Penguins in the sense that it's important for the standings or anything like that. But when you look at the team that's coming to town in the Buffalo Sabres, it's a young, rebuilding team that kind of seems like they're hitting the stumbling blocks already in this rebuild. Everybody, including us, expected them to take a step forward this season, and out of the gate, it has not been pretty for the Buffalo Sabres. They dropped their first 3 games of the season, 2 losses to the New Jersey Devils when they played in the Global Series across the pond in Europe. And then they come home. They dropped their home opener to the Los Angeles Kings, but they were able to get back into the win column for the first time this season against the defending champion Florida Panthers with a 5-2 victory over them. So this is a young team that is very much struggling after a disappointing season last year. And for a Penguins team that has shown some flashes of being maybe a little bit better than last season, like I said, maybe not a must-win game, but it's one that they probably should win.
Yeah, especially with all those tough games coming up, right? Because the schedule, it's about to get even tougher after this game. You have Carolina coming to town on Friday, Metro Division rival. That team, at least in our opinion, surefire playoff team still this year, even though I think they're going to take a step back. And then after that, we've already discussed it a little bit earlier this week. You have the Western Canada trip, the Winnipeg Jets. I have them as a playoff team this year. I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year, but this is still a playoff team that is also a tough place to play up in Winnipeg, especially when it gets loud. And then after that, you have the Oilers. They just got their first win of the season, Pat, last night against the Flyers. Granted, they had to come back to get the win, but they still got the win. Then you have the Canucks, and then you have the Flames, who are off to a very surprising 4-0 start. So these games, they're going to get tougher, and we all know how tough that Western Canada swing is. I'm glad that they're getting out of the way early, but this is a game you really want to win to get to 3-2, and also show that you can beat this team in the same way that you kind of beat Montreal and Detroit, right? Those two teams, not great defensively. You can say the same here about the Sabres. I don't really think they're that good defensively. They have some very great defensemen, 2 studs, I should say, in Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin. But as a team, they're very leaky defensively. I think I see the Penguins getting a lot of time and space against them, like they kind of did against Detroit and Montreal. And I think that can work to their advantage. But the Sabres do still have talent. It's about this team finally putting it all together. They hired Lindy Ruff for a second time over the offseason, a move that I got to say, not crazy about it. I didn't really like the way his tenure ended in New Jersey. The fans there had a very love-hate relationship with him. They were hating him at first. He got them to the playoffs. They beat the Rangers in the first round. They signed him to an extension. And then right after that, they went back to hating him because the team was just not performing up to their expectations. They were also battling a lot of injuries. But I still felt like that was a very questionable move. And as a whole, I think this season for the Sabres, it's make or break for a lot of people in this organization. I think if they miss the playoffs yet again, because you said last season was disappointing, Pat, the last 10 plus seasons, I think, have been disappointing for the good fans up in Buffalo. But if they miss again this year, I think you could see Kevin Adams, their GM, get fired. And I think you could see the new GM go in there and kind of go scorched earth a little bit and make some pretty big moves. But at least for this game, the Sabres up front, they do still have a decent amount of talent. Tage Thompson, good first-line center. He always kills the Penguins every time he plays them. Alex Tuch, really good right winger. You have Zach Benson, who almost fell to the Penguins last year, one pick away. And I do think had he been there, even with Yeager, I think the Penguins take Benson there, in my opinion. But then you have Dylan Cousins, Jack Quinn. You also have old friend Jason Zucker coming to town as well. Jordan Greenway, really good defensive player on the third line. But defensively, again, Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power, it's great that they're able to put them on separate pairings. You don't need to kind of do a super top pairing because their defense, I mean, it's a bit better this year. They do have Bowen Byram, who I am very crazy about, very good defenseman coming over from the Avalanche. So they have three studs on the back end. You have Clifton, Samuelson, Yoki Haru. Okay, those guys are fine, but they do have three pretty good studs. But again, as a team, they don't play that well defensively. It's in goal where I think that could be a difference maker in this one. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, best name in the world, by the way.
Love that name.
Pretty
One of my
solid.
favorites.
Yes, he's been pretty solid to open the season. He's been a pretty solid goalie, it feels like, throughout his career. You know, that could be the big X factor, it feels like, for me in this one. But yeah, even though the Sabres have had a rough start to the season, losing 3 out of their first 4 games, this is still not a game you want to take lightly. You want to bank the points in this one, especially with the tough games coming up. And wouldn't it be great if Malkin gets his 500th goal assisted by Sidney Crosby for his 1600th point? I think PPG Paints Arena, the roof will come down from it if that happens.
It would be absolutely incredible. And to build off what you were saying about the Buffalo Sabres at the end there, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, the best name in hockey, will have the net tonight, according to head coach Lindy Ruff. He will be going up against Tristan Jarry, who gets the net tonight. And I think this is a deserved start for Tristan Jarry because we talked about it recently after the win against Montreal. He did what he needed to do. Was he spectacular? No. Was he awful? No, he wasn't awful either. So he gave himself some goodwill with a solid start, and now you give him a chance to build upon that. And when you look at a team like the Buffalo Sabres that has a solid amount of individual talent, as you ran down, this will be another good test for him as well to build upon what was a solid start in Montreal. And if he can build upon that, it keeps this goaltending competition that the Penguins have going into the next week and as we go to the Western Canada swing. As for the Penguins themselves, it is going to be a very similar lineup to what we saw in Montreal. No changes to the forwards, same lines we saw in Montreal. The only change tonight is that Ryan Shea comes out. He is replaced by Jack St. Ivany, which we have to continue to give Ryan Graves at least a little bit of flowers because, as we've said, going into this season, the way to build him back into becoming a serviceable defenseman is for him to start stringing together performances where essentially we don't notice him. And for the last week, I have barely noticed Ryan Graves when he takes the ice. He's had some moments where he's looked good. He's had some moments that made us shake our heads and think maybe this guy is never going to get fixed. But that has to continue tonight. That's something I'm keeping an eye on. And the other thing that I want to keep an eye on tonight is this. Aside from the milestones, aside from the big guns, I think there is still something cooking with this bottom 6. Eller between O'Connor and Jesse Puljujarvi, they looked solid in Montreal, and the same can be said for Glass between Hayes and Achari. I have really liked the games of Kevin Hayes and Noel Achari at the wing. I think it's really helped them show their skill set better than they had at least in Achari's case, better as a Penguin. And I think where Kevin Hayes is in his career, he is better suited to play the wing. So really curious to see if this bottom six can keep the positive momentum going and hopefully set up the top six to help those big boys reach those big milestones.
Well, I do think if the bottom six, if they wanted to make one more move there, I would consider maybe promoting O'Connor from the third line up to Sidney Crosby's wing just to maybe get him going a little bit more, and then moving Beauvillier down to the third line. It's nothing against Anthony Beauvillier. I think he's had a fine start to the season, but it feels like, especially these last couple of games, he's out of his depth a little bit up there, just hasn't done as much compared to, obviously the Rangers game. And, obviously he was great against Detroit, but these last two kind of taking a little bit of a step back. With O'Connor, especially with the year he had last year and how much I think he can continue to grow, I would put him up with Crosby and Rust at this point, see what they can do together, see if that can also jumpstart Crosby a little bit more to start the season, and then move Beauvillier down to the third line with Puljujarvi and Eller to see how that trio meshes. Because I will say, I do like O'Connor, Eller, Puljujarvi, but I do think it could still get similar results with Beauvillier next to Eller and Puljujarvi compared to O'Connor. But that's just, again, small nitpicks that here and there for me. But I'm glad that Jack St. Ivany is coming back in. I think overall, even though it's only been one game for Ryan Shea, I think St. Ivany's been the better defenseman. For Graves, I'll give you this. He was better in Detroit. He was better in Toronto. Montreal, I did see a couple struggles start to come back. Took a really bad penalty throughout that game. He actually could have taken multiple penalties in that game, to be honest, that they just didn't call. So I guess a small step back if I'm nitpicking, but he wasn't, flat out terrible in that game. Just, again, taking a dumb penalty, could have taken a couple other penalties throughout that game. He's just got to be, in a better position overall. But I do like that St. Ivany is coming in, and, I'm sure we'll discuss another forward coming up here in the second segment, but still excited for this game. The Penguins have an opportunity to kind of keep putting more doubt in the Sabres, considering the start that they've had, while also getting out to a potential 3-2 start to the season, heading into that Friday game against Carolina.
And Hunter stole my tease. One forward who is still noticeably absent from the lineup is young gun Rutger McGroarty. We will talk about what needs to happen with him and what we think the plan should be with him moving forward. We will do that in our second segment when we come back. But before we do that, we have to tell you about a couple of our sponsors. And first, we're going to tell you about Gametime. You guys know that it is the best time in the sports calendar right now, with hockey all the way back, football all the way back, basketball right around the corner. This is the best time in the sports calendar, and there is nothing like seeing it in person, and that includes the Pittsburgh Penguins. So if you want to get that last minute ticket to maybe see those milestones in PPG Paints Arena tonight, Gametime is your place to go. So you can pick up an upcoming live event, browse to the app, seats on Gametime picks, and you'll find some great deals with so many great customization offers such as Gametime picks. That curation helps you save on sports, concerts, comedy, and more. And when you toggle on all-in pricing, you'll see the total up front, so you're not hit with any of those surprise fees at checkout. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app, so you know what you're going to be seeing in the app before you purchase your tickets. You have Gametime's lowest price guarantee, and if you find a better deal on a different app, they will credit you up to 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. And we're not done. We got to tell you about our next sponsor, and that is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves the game and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup live. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. If you think guys like Sidney Crosby or Evgeni Malkin are going to reach those big milestones tonight at PPG Paints Arena, go ahead and pick them. And you can run your crew when you run your game on PrizePicks. It's the best way to win real money this hockey season, especially if you think you know which players are hot, which players are not, and you can make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Our listeners know I am not great when it comes to season-long fantasy, but daily fantasy, that's where I absolutely cook, and I'm cooking on PrizePicks. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, welcome back to the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm Patrick Damp. That's Hunter Hodes, and the news just came down, so it spoiled this segment a little bit. But hey, good timing on Kyle Dubas's part. Must have known we were recording this afternoon, so he did us a solid. The Penguins have officially reassigned forward Rutger McGroarty to the American Hockey League, to the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, and everybody do this with me. In through the nose, out through the mouth. This is not the end of the world, I promise you. And this is something that Hunter and I were going to talk about when planning this show today, about what to do with Rutger McGroarty since he will not be in the lineup tonight. Now we know he's been assigned to Wilkes-Barre. This is the best thing for his development. Kyle Dubas kind of hinted at this earlier in the year, about a week or so ago, when he said he would prefer to see Rutger McGroarty playing. And truth of the matter is, while he has not looked out of place in an NHL lineup, he has not done anything in particular to force the coaching staff and management to keep him here. He's had flashes, he's had moments, he's not overwhelmed by it, but he's just not quite there to be an every night NHL player yet. And this will be the best thing for him, to go down to Wilkes-Barre, play 18, 19, 20 minutes a night on the top line, be on Wilkes-Barre's top power play. And the most important thing is he can build confidence. I think of it like Drew O'Connor. We talked about him in the preseason and how when he first came into the NHL, it was a very risk-averse game. He was putting the puck deep, taking low percentage shots, always looking for passes. Now, after time in Wilkes-Barre, more time in the NHL, he's holding on to the puck a little bit longer. He's driving to the net. He's a much more complete NHL player. So now you are going to have that opportunity with Rutger McGroarty. And a reminder that these things take time. Rutger McGroarty is 20 years old. He's not 25, 26, 27. He still has a lot of room to grow. And being a top contributor for Wilkes-Barre is only going to help that.
Rutger McGroarty, I do feel like, is going to be a very good player in the NHL. It is not that big of a deal that he's going down to Wilkes-Barre and is going to get 18 to 20 plus minutes a night playing on the top line and playing on the top power play. This is only going to help his development and fine-tune some parts of his game as well, so that when he comes up for good later on this season, he'll be a better player. I like that you brought up Drew O'Connor, because it kind of reminds me of that as well. You know, when O'Connor first made his NHL debut, again, he was okay, but it felt like, okay, there were parts of his game that were still lacking. So the Penguins, they developed him. They put him in Wilkes-Barre. He was able to fine-tune his game. And then you saw during the preseason last year, looked like a completely different player. And then that translated to the NHL season where, again, he didn't take the league by storm or anything, but he showed everyone that watches this team on a nightly basis that he is for real and that he can be a very good, at least third liner for this team that can score double-digit goals. He'll have a chance to maybe hit 20 this year if he maybe gets some top-line minutes, as I discussed in the first segment. But you saw how that development really helped O'Connor. I think it can only help McGroarty here as well. I felt like with McGroarty, I was happy that he made the team. I was happy that he got a shot in these first couple of games, and he was totally fine. Didn't look out of place to me. Wasn't bad or anything. But with the way the Penguins are going right now, with the way these other depth players are playing, it's only prudent for him to get playing time in the AHL, because if you're not going to play him here, why would you keep him up? He doesn't learn anything by being a healthy scratch on a nightly basis. That's exactly what Kyle Dubas said during his first media availability. He said, yeah, if he's up here, I want him playing. I don't want him sitting in the press box. Well, he followed up with that. He's not playing, so he's going to send him to Wilkes-Barre so he can get more time, develop his game, and all that. And I understand some people will be like, well, you just take this person out, take this person out. And what I would say to that is, okay, who? I mean, you want to make a case for Anthony Beauvillier. Okay, but I feel like he's been at least fine to start this season. I think he might be a bit out of his depth on the top line, but I don't think he's been bad by any stretch. Noel Acciari, that's another person that comes to mind, and that would actually be my top candidate, but it's obvious the Penguins really like his penalty killing ability, and he does work better on the wing on that fourth line with Cody Glass and Kevin Hayes. And honestly, that trio has looked pretty good together to start the season. So I understand why they don't want to take him off that line. Same with Cody Glass. And then with Jesse Puljujarvi, he's also very much earned a spot on this team. He is one of the team's best 12 forwards. So it's not like last year where you had some guys in the bottom six who were not that good that McGroarty could easily be playing over. This year, the depth is a bit better. You've seen that on the score sheet these first 4 games. So it's just a bit harder for him to crack. But I do think once he comes up, he will be coming up for good. And who knows, maybe he comes a little sooner, considering the Penguins' injury curse, knock on wood, hasn't hit just yet. We all know it comes at some point during the season and it hits them pretty hard, but everything is going to be okay. He'll be back up here soon enough, and I do think it'll be for the better.
And for me, the biggest thing to finish up this segment is confidence. You can instill so much confidence in his game at the American Hockey League level, which will help with his overall game at the National Hockey League level, because when he's able to go down there and get that swagger, develop that confidence, become a dominant player in the AHL, it'll at the very least put him in a mindset of, okay, I was able to do it there. Now I should be able to go do it up there. It'll lead to holding on to the puck a little bit longer and being able to be more consistent. He showed some flashes in the preseason and in the few games he got into this year at the start of the season, but they were a little too few and far between. If he can show that consistently at the AHL level, it'll help him be able to show it at the NHL level. So everybody relax. He's going to be back. This is better for his development. This is better for him in the long run than to burn him out at the NHL and keep him sheltered and not let him develop. So that is going to do it for our second segment. When we come back, it's the return of Warrior Helmet Wednesday. And while I think Hunter and I have the same candidate for Warrior Helmet Wednesday, who knows? It could be somebody different, but you're going to have to stick around and find out. And we are going to do that right after this when we tell you about our last sponsor, which is FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season big with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, maybe that's tonight when the Penguins are taking on the Sabres and you want to bet on a Sidney Crosby anytime goal, Evgeni Malkin anytime goal, Sidney Crosby anytime assist. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, welcome back to the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Patrick Damp. I'm joined as always by the illustrious Hunter Hodes. And hey, hockey's back. We're back into the regular season. And I know you're sitting there at home listening to Locked On Penguins or driving in your car listening to Locked On Penguins and thinking, guys, it's Wednesday. Shouldn't it be Warrior Helmet Wednesday? And you'd be right. It's Warrior Helmet Wednesday. For those of you who may be new to the show and are unaware of what Warrior Helmet Wednesday is, it is a tribute to the 2016 Stanley Cup winning Penguins when they gave their player of the game in the locker room a Warrior helmet and called them the player of the game. For us, every Wednesday, we will take a look back at the week that was and hand out our show's Warrior helmet for the MVP of the Penguins for that week. And just so you know, it doesn't always have to be a player. It could be a coach. It could be a manager. It could be a broadcaster, because we're an equal opportunity podcast here. We're not going to pigeonhole ourselves. But today, it's a player. And I think, Hunter, you and I are on the same page here. It's the Russian machine. It's Evgeni Malkin. A great first week for the man from Magnitogorsk. 1 goal, 6 assists, 7 points in 4 games as we record this. Second in scoring in the National Hockey League. So it was a great week from Malkin, and I think you want to wax poetic a little bit more about this than I do. So, my friend, the floor is yours. Hand Evgeni Malkin our Warrior helmet.
Yes, Evgeni Malkin 100% gets the Warrior helmet for this week. 7 points in 4 games, has been a terror on the ice, been a complete bully against basically every team he has faced, except the Rangers. But again, no one really played well in that game against the Rangers last week. But he has been an absolute joy to watch. His skating so far this season is through the roof. The way that he's been able to set up plays in the offensive zone has been a joy to watch. Again, it feels like he's 28 right now compared to 38. And it's awesome that he has 2 very competent line mates next to him. We're waiting for Michael Bunting to have that big breakout game this year like he did last year for the Penguins. I do think that's coming pretty soon. But, you know, he's really helped Rutger McGroarty get on the score sheet pretty quick this year. McGroarty already has 2 goals to start the season. Heck, remember last year, he didn't score in the team's first 19 to 20 games. Already has 2 goals here, in large part thanks to Gino being Gino in the offensive zone, but also Raquel going to the net, using his release to his advantage. But it's awesome that he's been the best overall skater, best overall player on the team to start the season. In a way, he's kind of carried them overall. And I'm just excited to see how he tops that last performance tonight against Sabres if he's able to. I want to see him get that 500th goal. We didn't mention during the first segment, remember that celebration he said he would do when he gets his 500th goal? He wants to do the Phil Kessel one because they have the bobblehead for him later on this year. I want to see him do that if he gets the 500th goal tonight. I think that would be utterly hilarious. I do think we will have more big things in store for Gino this year, just with the way he's playing. I think you could definitely see him hit 70 to 80 points this season with the way he's going right now.
Yeah, he has been absolutely on fire. I will give 2 quick runner-ups. Obviously, this was a unanimous runaway victory for Evgeni Malkin on our first Warrior Helmet Wednesday of the season. But 2 of my runner-ups are Erik Karlsson. I think he has been absolutely fantastic. Again, outside of the Rangers game, that at this point, we're giving the team a mulligan on the way they've played since. So that's in the past. The other one, I have really liked his game and everything he's done, is Kevin Hayes. I thought Kevin Hayes had a very solid week, and I can't remember. It was somebody in our comments, so shout out to you for this because it's a great comparison. It reminded them and me a lot of the short period of time the Penguins had Brian Boyle. He was a big guy who played within himself. Did it totally fit the mold of the NHL at the current moment? Did it totally fit Mike Sullivan's system? No, but he did all the little things he needed to do to be an effective forward, and early returns from Kevin Hayes to me are showing just that. So obviously, huge win for Evgeni Malkin. Great week for him. Hoping he hits the milestone tonight. 500 goals. That would be absolutely incredible to see. And 1,600 points for the captain would also be incredible to see. But we will find out if that happens tonight when the Penguins take on the Sabres at 7 o'clock at PPG Paints Arena. And good news, it is a national game. It will be on TNT tonight, so you can catch that there if you're not heading to PPG Paints Arena, if you're not using Gametime to get that last-minute ticket. But that will do it for the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. We will be back with a brand new episode recapping this game tomorrow, which is Thursday, and then we'll get you set for the weekend on Friday with the games coming up this weekend. But for Hunter Hodes, I'm Patrick Damp. Thank you as always for tuning in, and we'll be back with a brand new episode for you on Thursday.